Let's jump in with Jack in the UK.
Jack, we got you on the clock. What can we do for you?
Hi. I wanted to ask specifically if you're involved at all with the politics of in-person sex work and how it interacts with these online platforms, and like the critiques of in-person sex workers of the way that like there's a hierarchy between online sex work and in-person.
That has kind of changed a lot over the years, according to at least what I've understood about it, because basically once the start of Pornhub was the end of people being able to choose whether or not they wanted to be just porn stars or just prostitutes. Like they pretty much didn't, if they wanted to make any money, they pretty much had to do both, even if they didn't want to. So the lines between that have somewhat been broken down because of these free porn sites that just basically rake in ad revenue as opposed to actually buying the porn, being their way of making money. So ideally, I think that wouldn't be as much of a thing, because again, you don't always know where that porn is coming from when you are getting it from a massive website with just hundreds of thousands of videos from a bazillion different people. You don't know that all of those people were necessarily aware that they were being filmed some of the time, or that those people were not sex trafficked, whatever. But at the same time, even with the people who are totally like knowingly involved, they might have to have a side job of being an escort or doing prostitution or something like that just to pay the bills, because of those websites. Foreign movies don't pay that well anymore. But there's nothing wrong, I think, with you know, escort services, prostitution services, as long as those people that are involved can actually choose to do it. And I think it would be even better, again, if it was legalized so these things could be regulated. And I mean, hell, imagine a union made of sex workers that could say, okay, these are our rules, this is what we stand by, this is our limits, and that's the standard for everybody. You know, I mean, that would make things so much better, and I think that it would take a lot of the potential harm out of it.
I think part of why I was asking is because of the language that was being used about legalization, because obviously I've been like listening to the show before I called in. Like I am an in-person sex worker, which is why I asked the question. And most of the people I know who do in-person sex work don't also do online. I mean, there are plenty of us who do, but most don't. Most are working either like doing street work or from their own homes or from brothels. I mean, that's true in the US and in the UK, but I think it's more prevalent in the UK because we have like less access to these platforms. But what I meant is how they intersect with things like OnlyFans. Like I know that, like, for example, there are policies that OnlyFans has specifically because of US laws on in-person sex work, like SESTA FOSTA, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That was one of the biggest concerns about the whole SESTA FOSTA Act, was that once it was passed, it kind of made it a lot harder for in-person sex workers and escorts to find each other, to share information, to vet people online before meeting them in person, to cultivate a base of followers that they could then move into the in-person sphere with. So yeah, there is a direct connection between legalizing what is considered online activity and its impact on the outside world as well. So yeah, one of the reasons why Tumblr kind of died. It's one of the reasons why the Craigslist personal ads got taken down. Everywhere kind of shut down, and all of those platforms were being used by sex workers to protect themselves and find community with each other. So yeah, there is a direct link between the two.
Yeah, like I was thinking a lot about involvement and stuff, especially with like the way certain language is used. For example, like pretty much every sex worker organization that I'm aware of, like in the UK, the English Collective of Prostitutes or Swarm in the UK, like sex worker-led groups for sex workers' rights, almost all of them want decriminalization, not legalization. And I think there's this kind of disconnect between online sex workers and in person, specifically when the people who are doing online stuff aren't in person with like these organizations. And I think like there's lots of reasons for it. Some of it will be because they don't do outreach, right? Like organizations that are working with in-person sex workers are looking for in-person sex workers to talk to rather than online. But the people who are online have these like larger platforms and voices to talk about it versus someone doing street sex work. So I think like, I don't know, I was just interested if there's like overlap online in like the Twitter sphere on like different social media with sex work stuff. Like if there is overlap where people who are working online are hearing about like in-person sex work stuff from actual sex workers who are selling sex, or if it's like coming through other channels or what.
That is a really good question. How much overlap is there online between people who cam and people who work on the street? That is a very, I don't know if I have an answer to that. Rudy, do you find that you've got friends in both spheres, people you talk to, or what?
Well, the thing is, there's already so much, like as far as the stuff that I've seen from sex workers who promote themselves online on the various social media platforms, even the ones that are okay with, you know, X-rated stuff or R-rated stuff being on the platform, like Twitter, for example. Twitter allows nudity and stuff like that. Even then, if you have a link to OnlyFans in your post might get shadow banned. Your whole account might get shadow banned. So I can imagine it would be even more difficult for them to promote any kind of, or really talk about any kind of in-person sex work on social media. So if I do know people like that, I don't know that I know people like that, because they really, it's so difficult to talk about or to promote that kind of work because it is criminalized.
Yeah, also OnlyFans specifically has a policy that you cannot talk about on any of your associated platforms in-person sex work, or they will delete your OnlyFans account. So if you talk about the fact that you're involved in prostitution, they'll delete your OnlyFans account for it, because in their policy it says that you can't have social media where you talk about that and have an OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I imagine if you are seeing other people who have OnlyFans, right, if those are all the people you're interacting with, I mean, even if they are selling sex, they can't tell you because they can't post about it.
Yeah. So I probably have interacted with people who do that, but they can't talk about it. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Interesting. That is a really enlightening position to bring, Jack. So thank you. Yeah, I think this is making me want to dig into this even more. Rudy, we may need to have you back for a part two.
And maybe I need to dig. I mean, I'm thinking now about digging a little bit more, trying to talk to more people and, you know, find out more. Because you're right. It is, even with as stigmatized as it is, I still have a lot more of a voice than pretty much anybody that does in-person sex work, as far as being able to talk about it. So yeah, I fully agree with you on that.
Well, and it's worth noting that this has created something of a hierarchy among these different types of sites, because OnlyFans is certainly not the only website that does the things that OnlyFans does, but it is the biggest, the most polished, the most, I think, readily available and recognizable to like a mainstream middle-class consumer base. And that allows them to use that power to maybe put their thumb on the scale a little bit and to have certain influence and control over the performers and the content creators that you don't necessarily see on other websites. And it really does serve to create some unfair distinctions that can be dangerous and unhealthy, really.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for calling in, Jack. I really appreciate your perspective. It's a needed one on this show.
Thank you for your insight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.